Hello and welcome to the Castle of Horror Hangout episode where we explore the off-roads and byways in our journey to discover great horror. The Hangouts are our less structured episodes. That means I do not rule this conversation with an iron fist. I don't have a script. I barely have a script right now. And this is just the beginning, and then we'll have less. I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of the upcoming book, The Bookman from Castlebridge Media. This week with me are Pura Belpre-winning author David Bowles. Say hello, Professor Bowles.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Hey, welcome back. It's so good to talk to you again, honestly. And the creator of the long-running indie comic Halloween Man, Mr. Drew Edwards. Say hello.
I survived the deadliest movie ever made.
So you were saying that this movie has a reputation, and you were saying that you posted about it, and there were people who believed the story that the movie was cursed or whatever.
Legitimately believed the created mythology surrounding this movie, and I'm into it. I dig that. I like when I liked it when Blair Witch was able to at least for a little while pull that off, and you know I don't begrudge the people who made this movie for pulling that off either.
Yeah, me neither. It's a really clever framing device. Really well done. The film itself is really affecting, and then all the little inserted weird images and so forth are all disturbing and startling. So I mean, taken all together, it works really well. And so that some people buy it as it is being put across. I think that's wonderful as well. But there's a lot to enjoy even for people who who don't even consider that kind of stuff, who are like, yeah, no, obviously this is not. Obviously, I mean, here, let's take a look at IMDb. These actors are alive and making films and stuff like that, and just the slightest scratch beneath this, at the end of watching it on Prime, where it goes to the screen and it shows other films that these actors have been in. That's the first thing we did is went down to take a look at who played the demon, and he's a really handsome guy. We're like, damn, that makeup was made him look really. So, but yeah, I love that it can exist on those different levels. That there are people who are unable to look at it critically and accept it as it is, and other people who are able and willing to suspend their disbelief, and other people who enjoy peeling it apart and taking a look at the different elements and judging them on their merits and enjoying that kind of stuff.
Something though? I don't think we've even said what we're talking about. It just now occurs to me. I should mention the movie's Antrum. The movie is Antrum, or also known as the deadliest film ever made. Okay, I'm not going to read a whole thing about it, but it was made in 2018. And David, do you want to explain? There's basically two parts to the movie. Three, if you think of them chronologically, but two really. There's two. That is a frame, and then there's the middle.
Yeah, so there's the frame, which is this pseudo documentary of the cheap end sort that you might see on one of the basic cable channels that is talking about the mystery surrounding this film that's been exhibited just a couple of times, and each time there's been tragedy. The first time the entire theater burned down, killing the people that were in the theater, and then the second time in the States, there was a stampede and a pregnant woman was killed and so forth, and it turns out that one of the employees at the cinema had spiked the popcorn with acid or something. With LSD.
Yeah, and this is all a story being told by talking heads. In their cheesy. It looks exactly like the Shudder documentary that we just saw about cursed movies.
My favorite part. This was possibly my favorite stuff in this movie because I had just watched the Cursed Films documentary. Because you could have slipped this into that, and I don't think anybody would have noticed.
Yeah,
except for the very end. So on the tail end of the of this frame story, of relatively famous actor plays the role of a professor, and I was like, so
yes, okay. That's right.
He plays a detective on Bosch, on the TV show Bosch, and he's been in a ton of other things. Can't think of his name. He's a Afro-Latino, maybe Dominican. I can't think of his name, but he's a really, really good actor. Playing definitely against type because he usually plays a cop or something like that. And so I was like, okay, that took me out of it for a moment. But
Right.
yeah, it is really well done. I was also reminded of, you remember the documentary that M. Night did for his which movie was it that he did that for?
Signs?
Maybe it was Signs, but where he did like this documentary that was about his life, and it was really, really weird. It's all made up about his childhood, and,
Oh, right.
and basically, I remember watching that, like just being into it, and I loved all the stuff around the Blair Witch Project as well, all the online content, and so that kind of stuff was fun. I enjoy it just as a fan who just gets into like playing that kind of a game. It doesn't have to be real for me.
Yeah.
I'm slightly amused by people who find it real, but I also, as Drew said, don't have any problem with that. But that you have that wraparound that story, and then you have the film itself, Antrum, which appears with like pseudo Russian or Eastern European credits.
It looks like a 19th generation copy of a movie with Russian titles.
Yeah, it would have been great if they had put like Russian subtitles throughout the whole thing. That would have been like that really would have sold it. But it's really effective. It's shot on period specific film stock. As best as they can, they use clothing. There's not a lot of like really, really obvious anachronisms, and the story is, to me, really deeply affecting. So we'll dive into it, but the basic story is a teenage girl, or maybe she's even in her early 20s, but definitely like somewhere between the age of like 17 and 21, takes her young brother, who is tormented by nightmares about his dog being in hell, to the woods. And the type of woods they are is something I want to come back to in a minute. But takes him to the woods, telling him that they're going to dig a hole to hell to free the dog's soul, so it can go to heaven. Which is, some people will find that kind of thing like really sick, but I found it extremely sweet and extremely.
It was. Yeah.
It was very fairy tale like, especially like the mythology that she's created about how these woods is where Lucifer fell, and then even later on when they're dealing with the two cannibals, like they're almost like ogres in a fairy tale. So you say it's sweet, and I don't actually think that's wrong, because there is a very sort of Hansel and Gretel vibe to this.
That's a good way of saying it. Yeah, it is definitely very folklorish, and what I love about it is, I mean, obviously the the scope of the movie wouldn't allow them to actually dig a hole into hell.
Yeah,
that would have been beyond their budget. But I love the fact that on one level, the sister Oralee is explaining to her younger brother Nathan. That you dig and dig and dig, and then the forest itself like drops another level into hell. It's like
it's magical.
It's magical. The whole place is the act of your digging is compelling everything around you, the geography around you, to go deeper into hell, and the sky gets darker. They do really clever things to make each level feel a little bit different. A lot of sound design stuff that's really, really great.
But I mean, doesn't that sound like something that a kid would totally understand?
Yeah,
that an adult would not. Like, hey, pretend that every time we dig a little bit farther, this whole place transforms and goes a little. Great, that's kid logic, and it worked.
It was kid logic, and it worked. But then, like on another level, that is like a fantastic idea. That if you think about it being real, that the more you dig with the intent of reaching hell, the more hell is going to draw you closer. Like you want to go to hell. Hell's like, yes, fine, come. The more the merrier.
No, excellent point.
And like more and more harrowing things happen as they keep digging. And it's just really, really affecting. One of the things that I want to bring up, and I don't, I'm kind of doing this a little bit haphazardly.
You can go in any direction. We don't have to like move our way through the plot.
So one of the most important things is when they start digging, they find a gun.
Yes.
Now, and I think it's important for me to backtrack a little bit and talk and jump in whenever you want. I've like totally demolished what you asked me to do, but this is something I really want to get out, and it's on my mind right now. So when they come to this place, Oralee is prepared. She's prepared like a book. She's written a book. She's drawn all these images. She's created the different levels of hell in this kind of like weird idiosyncratic way, pulling from like Greek mythology and the Bible and stuff like that. And but beyond that, I mean, she's not really sure what she's going to do. She wants to take him camping. they're gonna dig a hole, and she's kind of part of it is she's riffing as they go. She
Yeah.
takes him to a suicide forest. That's one of the most harrowing things. It's a suicide. There's a sign that says, that like talking about the dangers and asking people. There's a suicide hotline number. There are all these little things that have been left, mementos of people's families, and they've gone and they've committed suicide there. And she, like on the fly, gathers up that stuff. She there's a statue of Buddha. There's like a little Jewish symbol, a cross. There's all these things that she gathers them up. And before she does it though, she tells her brother, you have to leave something here in order for you to be safe, something that belonged to somebody you loved. And so he leaves the dog's collar, and she snatches it up when he's not looking, because that's what she's going to use to later prove to him, hey, we've reached the level of hell where the dog is, because here's the collar.
So great.
And so she does. So she takes him and just like eventually just finds a place that seems likely to her. It's like a little jumble of branches. They move the branches, and she creates a pentagram. And at each one of the apexes of the pentagram, she puts these little mementos that she's stolen from the entrance to the suicide forest. So when my kids and I are watching it, we paused it and we were like, "Holy shit! Think about what this girl is doing." She's kind of brilliant to be riffing like so off the top of her head and making stuff up. But she's also taking her little brother into a suicide forest, which is fucking crazy.
I don't know if that even dawned on her. And the funny thing is, it's only later that she realizes that she's also in over her head. But the funny thing is that this is one of the places where the movie is kind of effective, is that she gets in over her head. And I mean, that's what the story is. It's supposed to be very simple. And then as they go deeper into hell, it gets more dangerous and more complicated for her. Go ahead. Yeah, please.
Yeah, I was going to say, so when she sets this up and they start digging, one of the first things that happens is she finds a vial of pills. Somebody who like killed themselves, swallowing the pills. And her brother finds a pistol, a revolver. So clearly, I mean, somebody has committed suicide and shooting themselves in the head with this pistol.
Yeah, that's right.
So that becomes super important. And it's something that I didn't necessarily notice the first time, or didn't think about too much. But the second time, I started counting every shot that she fires, because that's super important for the very end of it. That I'll wait until we kind of like make our way there, but I want to come back to the pistol and how many bullets she's fired, because like what that means for the very, very end of the film. I was because I'm super traumatized at the notion that she accidentally does what you kind of assume that she does, and there's to me there's a version of the story where there's hope, and there's a version of the story where her being in over her head takes her to like this kind of like the Stephen King The Mist kind of like just going too far.
Right. Well, since we don't see it. Go ahead. Yeah, please, Drew.
What I find fascinating about all this stuff that David is talking about is there's a lot of horror films where, I find, you'll come across people questioning whether or not anything supernatural is actually happening. Right? I hear people say that about The Haunting. I hear people say that about the Shining. And in those movies, I'm saying, I always say, no, you're not watching this movie if you don't think that this is an actual ghost story. Here, I actually think there is wiggle room. While they definitely end up in a dangerous situation. A lot of the stuff that seems like it might be supernatural or implicitly supernatural is not experienced by the older sister until she's in a full-scale panic at the end of the movie, or it's directly experienced by the younger brother, who already has hell on his mind. We know that going into that. And the only thing that makes me wonder if there's something supernatural going on throughout the entire movie is the issue of quote unquote Ike, which still could be explained away with it being the younger brother just lying. But I don't know.
Imagining it, or talking to a homeless person.
The problem with that Drew, is that Ike tells him something that he can't know. Ike tells him, your sister is going to try to deceive you by using your dog's collar. And he's not seen her take the collar. And when he reveals that's the one thing. Because,
That's
I
true.
agree with you. There are two readings of this film. And I love, like, the wiggle room. I love, like, it's like one of those optical illusions that flip back and forth between two different images. That's the way I feel about this movie. It flips back and forth between this girl has done something she didn't realize that she could do. She actually is, like, they are actually digging into hell. And then the other one is they've just come to a suicide forest, which is next to a trailer park that just happens to have cannibals who cook their victims in.
Well, in a way, those cannibals are really smart. Not that they're portrayed that way, but like if you're gonna be murdering people, being set up next to a suicide forest is.
So hang on a second about the cannibals. I'd like to work our way to the cannibals because there's two episodes before that. The movie, by the way, I think if somebody didn't like the movie, one of the difficulties is that it's a little on the slow side. I mean, I think it's interesting and dreamy, but it can be a little slow. But there are two episodes before they get to the cannibals. The first one, in the first layer, it's just now occurring to me that each of these, the layer has an episode, right? Yeah. And they come across this Japanese guy who wants to commit suicide, and they interrupt him. And that's a disturbing moment because Orly becomes aware that they're about to accidentally witness somebody's suicide because she's older and she's more aware of things. So she becomes aware of the danger of seeing this before the little brother does. And that. But the thing is, that's clearly just they're here doing their thing in the woods. And then they come across this guy. So it's just, it's kind of it's embarrassing and silly, but it's almost comedy because it's no harm, no foul, really. I mean, they interrupted a guy who wanted to commit suicide and he goes away. The next episode is super freaking strange, which is the kid gets up in the middle of the night to pee, and there's a river, which I don't even think I was even aware of the river. I mean, I think the filming of it, I'm not sure I was aware there was a body of water anywhere. Weren't you guys amazed at this? Because all of a sudden there's that boat there, and like I didn't see who's rowing it, but like there's a naked woman
there's some guy rowing. Up. Yeah. She looks a lot. She looks a lot like his mom. It's not
right.
But she looks a lot like his mom.
Yeah. It's this skinny blonde person, sort of crouched, arms around her knees as this boat drifts into the distance. It's a very dreamy image. It's
also supposed to be evocative of the river Styx.
Right.
So, like,
I guess so. I guess it is.
Yeah, no, I thought, oh my gosh, I don't think, Jason, yes, I think it clearly is.
No, it is,
because later
I don't know what
that
means. I mean, like,
it's a crossing into the underworld, and later when Orly and Nathan cross, and it forces them to circle back, it's just kind of reinforcing the circular concentric circles of hell, right? They've crossed the river Styx, but all it does is just bring them deeper into hell in the same place where they already were. Anyway,
the funny thing is watching that. This is very much like a stage play because you know how in a stage play you'll have the image of the castle oftentimes behind you, and the actors say, gosh, it's really wild to be inside this castle, and you just understand that a thing that you're observing is the thing that's happening to the characters,
right?
Even though in fact it doesn't use a visual vocabulary that happens on film, right? On film, if a person is inside a castle, they're literally inside the walls. But on stage, you can do all kinds of things because everybody understands this is how we show stuff. So I guess that makes sense. You're seeing an image of a boat going across into another part of the afterlife. And so that is supposed to be reflective of something the kid is going through. Having said all of that, it's just freaking creepy. And it just works as just a weird, ghostly image that would be disturbing to me, even if I hadn't ever read about Charon or heard Greg Kinn's Don't Pay the Ferryman or anything like that.
The other thing about all this stuff, you talk about the dreaminess of it, is throughout this entire movie, there's all these subliminal things, which
we haven't talked about that.
Okay, I'm trying to decide if we want to. And by the way, you know what? I'm being the boss again, and I shouldn't be. If you guys want to talk about that now, but boy, let's talk about it. But boy, there's a lot of that crap. I kind of want to get to the cannibals first, but
okay.
But yes,
we could do that.
Okay, let's go through to the cannibals, and then let's talk about the supposed things that have been done to this 1970s film. But still, working our way through the 1970s film, it's the next day, and why did they come across the cannibals? How does that happen? Like
they are looking for, quote unquote, looking for the dog. They're looking for like this is when she has planned to plant the collar somewhere, so they will come across.
It's all her innocent play acting thing that she's doing for her brother. Yes.
And but as we've already seen from the previous two escapades, this is not a good place for them to be. And they come across a sort of dilapidated, junkyard, trailer park, whatever you want to call it. It looks straight out of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
And these two like the funny thing is about it, if it wasn't for some of the content, we keep talking about the fairy tale-ness of this. If it wasn't for some of the content in this movie, and I'm not even talking about like the occult connotations. I'm talking about like the occasional nudity in some of the imagery. You could this would be an okay movie for kids in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Until they come across
the first cannibal, Cassius or Hansi? They have names.
Yeah, whatever.
I didn't absorb their names.
He's having sex with a deer.
A dead.
Yes.
And
his brother seems to be like, "Would you come over here and leave that deer alone?" Like it's more like
that deer and get over here.
Get over here! I need your help with my giant Baphomet fire thing.
Giant Baphomet smoker, of which
long pork smoker.
Yeah.
And the one brother wears
the Japanese guy from earlier too.
Yeah, it's the Japanese guy. That's right. Poor motherfucker.
It's a shame. Yeah, so they're torturers. Now we're like into full on torturous killing. A lot of it's off screen, but we hear the screams and yada yada. But these two guys
is haunting though, dude. That design, that's like the most incredible thing in this film. Holy shit, that is scary looking.
Yes. Yeah. And the two brothers are chattering and in
some East European language.
Yeah, some Eastern European language. So it's playing on our sense of exotic.
Right.
And one of them wears no pants. He just wears dingy white underwear all the time, which just is mind blowing and hilarious. They and wears antlers for no particular reason,
and runs around with a tuning fork. That's
right.
Great.
He's like addicted to this tuning fork, where he'll go boom, and it fills the whole. So if you were managing your Dairy Queen, and these guys walked in for a hunger buster, you would not want them.
You'd be like, "Sir, could you put pants on, please? This is a Dairy Queen."
We've all been around people where you're like, boy, this is not a good person to have walked into my life. When these guys take a turn and they wander into the junkyard Baphomet smoking pit, that is run by these two Russian-speaking, underwear-wearing deer rapists, they're not in a good spot. And she's like...
And they run away. They run the fuck away, right?
Right. Right. This is totally... She's like, let's go. But they do wind up captured, and that.
Well,
and
the
funny thing is
the fact that the younger brother reacts very much. Like a lot of the times, I feel like when you watch horror films, you have a little kid that's in my opinion probably a little bit too compliant to go along with the adult. And that's the way little kids are. I love the fact that he's still like, what about Max? Is it Maxine? Was that the dog's name?
Maxine. Yep.
Yeah. What about Maxine? He's like screaming and like fighting her, and she's like basically having to like drag him
into the tent.
Yeah. It's so much more intense.
It is really, really intense. And one of the things I love is how things that he says get. This is like my argument about the spirituality or the supernatural element of it, is that when they're digging and they're going, she's like, I think we've gotten to like the second layer, and he's like, no, because there's got to be trumpets that sound. And the reason they go to that junkyard is because as the long pork, smoker gets hotter, Baphomet, it like makes this sound. It like makes a trumpeting sound as the steam is pushed through. And so they keep hearing the trumpeting sound, and the kid is running, and she's going after him like, "What the fuck? Stop!" And he's climbing into this scary ass place, and the first guy walks by dragging the carcass of a I can't remember what it was, some dead animal. The older brother, the one that doesn't fuck dead deers, and
yes.
Hey, you don't know that just because we didn't
true.
see him do it.
Maybe he's just like a little more delicate. He likes to do that in the privacy of his like own broken down trailer and not out in the street like his brother.
Yeah.
But yeah,
God.
I mean, all this, it's really intense. That whole scene is just like, at that point, the movie goes from like more dreamy to like downright scary. Like, you now fear for these children's lives.
It kicks into gear. Like up until that moment, it's been a sleepy, slow, meandering, episodic story that you're either kind of enjoying or not. And now all of a sudden, it's really suspenseful,
and we start hearing like all the rattling chains, which the kid interprets as being Cerberus.
Yes,
and we later find out it is.
I can't remember what it is.
It's a dog. It's a dog.
Right.
That has its foot caught in one of the cannibal's traps.
Right, which he winds up freeing.
He frees. So on one level, he's been scared, and it really is it's a Siberian husky that's been caught in his trap. But on another level, because his sister has told him, we won't be able to leave until you have to free Maxine's soul, and then she'll be able to go to heaven. This is him freeing, Maxine's a dog. What's the soul of a dog? This is what I told my kids when we were watching. I was like, don't you see? It's supposed to, on one level, be like Maxine's soul, because what's the soul of a dog? It's a wolf. And my kids are like, that's a Siberian husky. And I'm like, yes, but they couldn't afford a fucking wolf. Like they could, like the squirrel scene, the demonic squirrel. Oh my god!
Yes,
the crazy stop motion squirrel.
I loved the stop motion squirrel.
Oh my god! That was great.
Have either of you ever seen a movie called Equinox?
Yes.
I've seen parts of it. I'm working my way through it.
It's kind of a weird movie, but the squirrel reminded me of like something that would have been an Equinox.
Yeah,
the animation in Equinox is better than that squirrel.
Oh yes.
I started watching Equinox because for years I've been meaning to see it, and I just keep missing it. And then the Monster Movie Happy Hour guys did an episode on it. I'm like, I need to watch the damn Equinox movie. Because what was cool about that, and that is a super important movie to discussing this movie, is Equinox was a true low-budget film made in the late 60s. And then cleaned up a little bit because they put a frame story around it that was of a higher quality than the actual movie, which is what this one purports to be. But two things. First, that squirrel, it's funny, I know a guy who's like a hardcore serious horror writer. And he was talking about this when it came out, like, a year ago. And he goes, I saw that squirrel and it took me right out of it. And I was like, that squirrel is exactly what it's supposed to be. It is a really awful looking, cheap animated squirrel. There's no universe where you can expect that the producers of this movie thought you would think you were looking at a squirrel. I mean, I think it's deliriously fake, right? And I don't know, or am I? To me,
you're reading exactly right. That's exactly the way I saw it. Had this been an actual movie from the 70s and that had popped up, I wouldn't have batted an eye. It's like what you would expect. Yeah.
Right.
Well, also, I think the fact that it is this sort of low rent stop motion adds to the surreal environment of this movie.
Yeah, it does. It looks surreal. It doesn't look real.
It's fucking insane looking too.
Yes,
it is,
because it's all ratchety. Yeah, absolutely. But having said that, this movie, one of the complaints people have about the idea that this movie is a found film is that it's probably a little too good looking. But actually, you know what? Let's save that thought. Let's get through this found movie, and then let's start talking about the supposed reality of this 1970s film that you could pick up and hold in your hands. So.
Right. So they run away, and it seems like they get in the boat. They're crossing the water. Something pulls her brother in, or he falls in, It seems like something pulls him in. She goes and gets him, and they finally cross. And
they're back where they started.
Yeah, but at first there's these scenes where they're like, the music is swelling, and they're all happy, and they're running hand in hand, and it looks like they're getting out. And then suddenly they emerge from like this, come around a bend or whatever, and boom, they're back in the camp. And she kind of loses her shit. And then the cannibals show up and basically and capture them, shoot them with like sleeping darts and drag them off. And they're in cages. And the deer fucker is tormenting her little brother and getting ready to put him in the long pork smoker. And she busts out of the cage.
No, he's in there already. The brother.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. That's right. He puts him in there and starts the fire, and she's freaking out. And it's like one of the most harrowing scenes ever. And I was
it is
really, really well done. And like she is freaking the fuck out, and she kicks so hard that she kicks the cage open.
Yeah.
And it's believable because it's a like rickety old piece of shit anyway. And gets her brother free, gets a gun, shoots the guys. It's a badass scene. And what I love about it is almost always in the horror films, there'll be like this, getting the gun and hesitating and the gun taken away, or, you're pointing, your hand is shaking and you fire and you miss or whatever. She fucking grabs that gun and she plugs those fuckers. She boom, like and then like does another shot. Just like she slaughters the two of those fucking dudes.
Yes.
But of course her brother, she's gotten him free, but he runs off and now they're separated.
Yeah.
And he's being, she's all freaked out, and he's hearing the rattling chains and seeing the black figures, and she sees the black figures as well. And she finally comes back to the tent, and she's like just all freaking out. She's got the gun, and she's pointing it, and he's coming, and he's like talking backwards. It's like the weirdest thing ever. It's like so surreal. And so he's like trying to call her, but his voice is backwards. And
I don't remember that, but I believe you.
Yes, his voice is backwards. And several points in the film, he speaks and his voice is backwards. And he's making his way to the tent, and she's holding the gun up, pointing, and he's coming closer, and she's pointing, and then the film ends. And actually,
the film ends. You hear a shot.
There were two. Yes, right. Do you hear a shot?
You do hear.
I don't recall hearing a shot.
I don't think you
hear a shot.
You do not hear a shot. Nope.
I thought you heard a shot.
No, you do not. You don't hear a shot.
Wow, that's amazing. So if I thought you heard a shot, then I was just fooled. My imagination just fooled me.
Yeah, it's just like what you would assume would happen. Because I the second time I watched it, I was very careful. I was counting the gunshots because I don't want Orly to kill her brother, dude. It's I thought I
still have the possibility that she could just get lucky and miss him.
Yeah.
I mean,
but here's the thing. So I counted the shots. I wanted to be sure. If somebody killed themselves, there would be 5 bullets left. She accidentally shoots one when she first like sets it down or whatever. There are 4 bullets left. She uses those 4 bullets to kill the cannibals. There are no bullets. There should be no bullets left. So she should, when she pulls the trigger on her brother, it won't fire and he'll be okay. And they'll be able to get out of that forest and go home. And I desperately want that to be true. And so in my headcanon, that's what happens.
I give you complete permission for that to be the case. Because, go ahead, Drew.
So I have only watched this movie once. Like I haven't watched it twice like David has. But, I have talked to people about it since watching it. And, I've come across some people that didn't like it. And here's the thing. I completely understand why this movie would not be to someone's taste.
Oh my God, yeah.
But what you were just describing about like being able to like count the bullets and everything, like there was a lot of thought that went into this movie that is 100% admirable.
Mm-hmm. It's an amazing work.
I didn't really think of it being that powerful until this discussion, because so obviously it's taken some time in analysis to be aware of the work that's happening here.
But that, to me, that's what makes something art. And I mean, I know. Oh my God! Here we go. Here's the university professor about to declare that this crazy ass
film go crazy
is the work. But I would argue that it is art. And I know that
it's definitely art. I don't even have to. You don't have to prove any.
I mean art in the more enduring sense that something is a work of art, and rather than just entertainment, when it has these layers and you can peel them back and you can think about them, and there's the metaphorical layer, there's the literal layer, and there are all these implications, and you can read so much into it that richness is here. But I think the richness is here just in the pseudo 1970s film.
Yes.
And I think the rest of it is not art, and is what makes it difficult for people to see it as art. Like if this had just been if this had just been a couple of guys saying, we're going to make the most realistic 1970s horror film we can, we're going to recreate shit down to the end, we're going to build in all this really weird stuff, they would have been making an art film, an art house film that might have been received differently than what they've done, especially with all of the insertion of like the snuff film being cut in and all these places. That snuff film is the thing that I feel is the worst about this whole thing. It detracts the most from this experiment. All the stuff about the man and the woman being killed, and wasn't it weird?
I like a lot of that. So I wish there were two edits. I wish there was two edits of this movie. I wish there was one that was like whole on the hog, just a mockumentary about this cursed movie. Because I have a thing for stuff like that. I enjoy stuff like that. But I also wish there was one that was just the sort of movie within the movie, because I feel like that movie is a good enough movie experience. And honestly, like the 70s thing, gives it a feel that they were going for. But I think the story was good enough where they didn't even have to have that if they didn't want to.
Yeah, I hear you. They could have said it in the present day.
Yeah,
that's true.
Like what you were saying though about like the subliminal messaging and like the grafting end of the snuff film. Like, what were you saying about that, David?
Yeah, to me, especially specifically the snuff film. Not so much like the symbols and stuff like that, because the symbols were like I don't know, they added a little bit to it, but the snuff film just took me out of it completely. All the scenes of the man and woman being bound and gagged and then being tortured and being shot, like, to me there was like that was just useless. It was almost as if the filmmakers wanted to break up some of the monotony of the more slow moving folkloric film.
Well, I think that might be the case, David. I
think it's also because they, I feel like it's that they didn't trust the movie to be creepy enough on its own, because like the snuff film doesn't even really, like, the symbols fit, like the demonic characters fit, because we're dealing with a movie that is, it's that, we talked about this genre just a few weeks ago, and we did Prince of Darkness. This is a satanic panic movie. All that stuff makes sense. The snuff film, it's not a cult. Like, it doesn't have anything to do with anything that's going on in the movie. So it just feels out of place. And again, like, they just didn't trust this movie to be scary enough on its own.
And frankly, it feels poorly filmed, and like it was thrown together, and like they're like, oh shit, we got to film something kind of freaky. Let's put a snuff film in there. They'd been better served if they'd done something a little more demonic, because at the end, so there's I want to talk about the demon in a second, but there's a false ending, or maybe like the actual ending of the film, and then like we get to see beyond the film. So when the boy, when Nathan frees the dog, and the dog runs off and is going up, like ascending, he's going up like a little like cliff or whatever. And the boy has a big smile on his face, and then it's like the end, and it's like music, and then like this that fucking triangle superimposes on the film, and it keeps going, and the triangle's there the whole time. That's pretty disturbing. Like the symbol just boring into you, then so that when the revelation of what the triangle means at the end, that was really, really effective. You're like, oh shit, I've been staring at this triangle, and it's like communicating with the demons, and then the final scene where the fucking like the demon like leans out of the darkness and points. I thought that was badass. I thought that was really effective.
The two appearances of the demon are good, because there's an earlier one that's in an image so dark that you almost can't see him. and he's staring at you and you're staring at him like he's interrupted you watching this movie and wants to just look at you for a little bit. That's great.
That was really, really great. The other there are like all these little things. The prayer, dude. The fucking prayer she makes up. That is so affecting. Every time it comes up, that's brilliant. Those kinds of things. Those are like the little things that make you go, huh?
I fully expect that prayer to end up as like a soundbite used by some horror punk band in the next few years.
I wouldn't doubt it. And when she says it the first time, the camera work, the way she gets really dark all of a sudden, and when she and she's yelling it and like this voice that's like this, it's like Kate Blanchett in the second
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, you remember that scene, right? It's that same thing where she's like, you're scared of her for a second. You're like, holy shit, Aurelie, where does this come from? And then
that's all beautiful. Well, but there's this other weird thing going on where which reminds me of being a kid in the 80s and the 70s, where there were all of these sort of urban legends about, manipulation of media. And somehow to a kid, that sounds like something that could do magic. In other words, just some guy doing some physical, mechanical stuff to media could have a magic effect. Somehow that works in your dream mind. And so the idea that you're not just watching Antrum, which was made in the 70s, God knows where, and has like fake Russian titles, but American actors. But you're not just watching that, but somewhere along the way, some evil person has taken it, and what did they list? They've doused it in weird chemicals that affect people. They've added a second layer of teeny tiny skinny plastic that has runes on it.
Yeah.
Teeny tiny plastic, by the way, is another word of saying tape. They've essentially put tape on it that has scratched in runes. And they've
added sound. Yeah, they've
right. They've added weird sounds. And then somewhere along the way, all that stuff, by the way, makes sense. The part of the story that doesn't make any sense is also they appear to have added a snuff film that would have to have been filmed, that looks to have been filmed like in the 90s.
Right, exactly.
So that makes no sense.
That's why if
is that what snuff films looked like in the 90s?
I'm just saying that video looks like.
What was the name of that Nick Cage movie?
8mm.
8mm. Yeah, it looked like it could have been taken out 8mm. On the off chance that the makers of this film happen to like stumble across this podcast and listen to it, guys, release the 70s film without the rest of the shit in it. I want to see it. I would buy that shit. I would spend $50 on like a really pristine copy of that film. I really would. Anyway.
I would love a Blu-ray of this that had like the 70s movie by itself, and then like a 45-minute to hour-long like
extended mockumentary. Yeah, that would be badass.
Like this is the reason why I can see this movie become like a cult film, because like it's got all this stuff that you can pick apart, and like it's like a big piece of like cinematic taffy. And you can pull it apart and mash it back together, and like it's just the sort of thing that gives people something to talk about. Which all good cult films have to have that.
I mean, think about the fact that we watched the remake of oh God, what's the one about the people who I can't believe I could remember 8mm, but I've forgotten the name of the movie about people who try to make themselves die and come back to life. Flatliners. Yes, I'm sorry. So we watched the remake of Flatliners, a movie which has, disrespect to the people who worked hard to make it, but it has nothing to recommend it. No, it isn't even.
It is certainly not art. It's not even,
and it's not even sure if it's a horror movie. I mean, that's a movie that makes zero choices. It's really troubling how little happens in that movie, and this is not that. This thing is gonzo. I admire how much is going on here, even if. Yeah,
I tell you what, like I watched it just on a whim. I guess about a month ago. I had watched some other horror movie, and I was like, let me just like see what Amazon recommends to me, and it recommended this, and I read the description, and I was like, oh, that sounds that sounds like it could be fun. And I watched it, and as I was getting towards the end, I was like, holy fucking shit! And after it was over, I think I took a bathroom break, and I went and told my daughter Nikki, who's a big horror fan and was staying with us as part of the coronavirus thing.
Yes.
Dude, you need to see this film. And I kind of explained it to her, and she's like, why did you not tell me? I want to be watching this movie now. And I go, well, no, I'll rewatch it with you tomorrow. She goes, I want to watch it now. I go, no, wait for you to. And I rewatched it a second time the following day. There are not a lot of movies that you can rewatch within 24 hours. And
no, that's true.
Find, satisfying on the second viewing.
How does Amazon sell this movie? Like, what did they say in the? I'm gonna try and bring it up and see what description.
The description, because this. Again, my upstairs neighbor told me about this movie, and I went and looked at it, and I remember the description kind of being kind of meh on that, and so I don't actually think the description does it justice, but I think if you're to describe this movie to somebody, it's gonna sound like a found footage movie, and that's not what this is.
No.
Right. It's a found movie in theory. It's fake, by the way, but it's a found movie.
For those of you who haven't understood at this point, it's not real. It's not real.
Yeah, well, that and so, but the Amazon description says, rumored to have been lost, Antrum appears as a cursed film from the 70s. Viewers are warned to proceed with caution. It's said to be a story about. This is the weirdest description. I can't believe that you decided to watch this movie based on this description.
I know, it was just so weird. I just thought it was like, wow, that sounds really hinky. I'm going to watch this.
What I think is wild when you're like watching movies on Amazon. And by the way, I think the recommendations on Amazon are better than anything else on the planet, right? But what's super strange is a lot of stuff on Amazon, they will deliberately hide when a movie is made. This is sort of the reverse of that. This is a fake, and Amazon is saying this maybe is from the 70s, maybe not. We're not going to say.
Yeah. But at the same time, if you pull it up on the screen, it shows you the actors and it shows you other films that they're in that are contemporary films. They're being a little coy, but not overly so. All it takes is
they're real actors. Nicole Thompson is an actress in American Horror Story.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to tell you. So I had let me explain to you the film that I had just watched was Satanic Panic. I had just watched Satanic Panic, and so I wanted to see something like that, kind of cheesy. Something, just whatever.
Brady Hendrix's movie with Jerry McConnell. Jerry
O'Connell.
Oh my God,
that's a fun movie, but it's definitely not. It's not art.
No, that is the farthest. That is pretty far from art, but it's entertaining. And so I was so I thought maybe this would be something like that. I was not prepared to experience what I experienced. So it was really. I was like, wow, this is good. I got to show it to my kids.
But I was troubled about Satanic Panic, and I liked that movie well enough, but I didn't feel like it was actually. It wasn't about Satanic Panic. That was just the title. It had nothing to do with Satanic Panic.
It's still about a satanic cult.
It is, but if you're going to make a movie called Satanic.
You and I have different ideas of what Satanic Panic means, I guess. I've started to piece that together over every time we talk about a satanic horror film.
Let's discuss this, because that's an interesting thing. I'm dying to hear at 20 seconds, like you're falling down an elevator shaft. What does Satanic Panic mean to you?
Well, what is the Satanic Panic, or what is the genre of?
I look at that movie and I go, this movie is a good movie, but it should not have been called Satanic Panic, because that's not what this is about. So Satanic in my mind, there's a thing that I can describe that is that.
Satanic Panic to me is a horror film that has to do with the occult, particularly some form of Satanism. And that can be The Exorcist, or that can be the movies that we are talking about. Or that could be Hellraiser, like that. It just has to be a demonology themed horror film.
And to me, that's perfectly. Look, your description is as good as mine, right? But that to me is not what I mean when I use that term. To me, Exorcist is not a Satanic Panic movie. In fact, I'm hard pressed to think of a single movie that is a Satanic Panic.
Well, I mean,
when I think of
House of the Devil.
House of the Devil
House
is
of the
definitely
Devil,
a satanic panic horror film.
I wouldn't even go there. To me, that's a
Well,
supernatural
that's because you're wrong.
thriller. To me, Satanic Panic. I mean, it's very possible that I'm just plumb wrong. Yeah, because it's
Well,
occurring
you
to me
can't
that
even give me an example of. I'm not trying to be argumentative. Just give me an example of what this is.
It's totally valid. Let me tell you what I think Satanic Panic is, and then it's occurring to me that there are no movies about this. Satanic Panic is a period in the late 70s and early to mid 80s when towns were afraid that Satan was causing causing kids to go crazy and people to get sacrificed. But it's about, in other words, a movie about Satanic Panic would be something like Mazes and Monsters, where Tom Hanks goes crazy playing D&D. That's a Satanic Panic movie.
That is part of it.
Yeah.
When you talk about like you're right in saying that is what the Satanic Panic was.
Right.
But
you're saying if that's your description of Satanic Panic, you're going to have a genre made up of one movie because there aren't really a lot of movies about that.
The genre of movies is a different. And most of those movies did not exist without The Exorcist, by the way. This movie that we are talking, both of these movies that are part of this splinter conversation that we are having would not exist without The Exorcist. The Exorcist is maybe not the first movie about Satan, but it is definitely the movie that I think crystallizes that moment in pop culture.
Well, yeah, and in fact, that Satanic Panic, all the way to people getting arrested for crimes they didn't commit, probably never would have happened if you rolled back and The Exorcist never happened. If The Exorcist never happened, the Satanic Panic probably never happened. Isn't that wild?
But I would even say the Satanic Panic went longer. I would say that it wasn't mid 80s. I'd say it ended in the early 90s. But
I have an interesting movie for you that will blow your mind, and it keys into Antrum, actually. There's a movie called Lisa and the Devil by Mario Bava from 1974. And this is a fun movie that wasn't done deliberately like Lisa and the Devil, but it's the same sort of just I don't know, David, maybe you have a professor word for this, but there's just something really. Lisa and the Devil initially was a movie about a girl who goes to a haunted house and she solves a ghost mystery, right? They make the movie, but it doesn't really go anywhere. It's not a bad movie. I like it, but it doesn't really take off. Doesn't make any money. But The Exorcist is a big deal. So Mario Bava and the producers take Lisa and the Devil, and they take that movie and they cut in a whole exorcism storyline. So they make a second movie out of the first movie. And then they sell that one, and that way they were able to sell into the international markets. And I just find that fascinating. These moments when a work becomes another work, and
hey, speaking of that,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, have you seen the movie We Summon the Darkness yet?
No, tell me about it.
Oh my God, you totally should. Have you seen it, Drew?
No, I'm wondering if this is the same one that we had a similar plane of thought.
Yeah. Tony did recommend it. Yes, he did.
Yeah,
and I just haven't seen it yet.
I haven't heard your most recent episodes, so I haven't heard it.
When we talked about Prince of Darkness, unsurprisingly, we talked about satanic stuff.
It is a beautiful example of a Satanic Panic movie. You guys need to see it and discuss it. I think you'll really, really love it. It's great. It's got a great twist. It's batshit crazy. It's just really badass. By way of explanation, I don't know whether I've told you to this. I think I've mentioned parts of the story to you. But so when I was 7, my dad converted from Catholicism to evangelical Christianity, became a pastor. And so when he was nominally a Catholic, he had also dabbled in like witchcraft and like
you do.
Yeah, what I mean, but like big time. I mean, because he had been stationed in Port-au-Prince and Haiti, he had brought back a bunch of like voodoo things, paraphernalia. He had a pentagram painted on the floor of his study, which was a converted garage. he had like a little statue of a dark god made out of human bone that he would burn Polaroids of women that he wanted to sleep with on. He was like into that kind of shit big time. So when he became a Christian, he was like demonophobic. And
really,
like, one of the things that he would talk about when he was talking to young people in the church, obviously including me, was that we need to be careful because a lot of, like records had backwards messages.
Yes.
And so
backmasking, baby. Yeah.
Backmasking. And so that's one of the reasons behind my obsession for this, because I was like, 14 years old in 1984 when like all this shit was like, and I was, super, super obsessed with it. And that's one of the reasons that I love these kinds of films. And so anything that it just has like a flavor of that, of the over the top,
yes,
almost operatic way of looking at the worship of Satan. It's one of the reasons that I'm also like a big fan of the band Ghost and stuff like that, because I like that kind of.
David, have you heard of Twin Temple?
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally. Yeah.
All right.
I agree. If you're gonna show Satan worship, go big. I mean, like the Anton LaVey, the orange and the black and the fires and the naked people and all that stuff. I mean, go big. Because why make it boring? Satan in some stupid suit like Al Pacino. No, man. I want.
I love that you just referenced Devil Advocate.
Well, thank you. But I mean,
and Twin Temple is really, really cool because, of course, it blends all of that over the top operatic Satan stuff, with like rock and roll and doo-wop and stuff like this. Is like, I love it.
I love the idea of a satanic doo-wop band.
Yeah,
that is.
Jason, if you have not listened to Twin Temple, you need to do that.
Yeah.
Like when we're done with this podcast, that's your homework.
All right, sweet. Y'all need to watch Lisa and the Devil, by the way. Man, we got to do that.
Sorry. No. Finish your thought.
We got to do that on the show, honestly.
We could. But I want to know, Professor.
Yes, sir.
So who is right about satanic panic movies?
I am in your camp, sir.
I am
roundly in your camp. I think that our lawyer friend rather has a way too narrow a definition and is being too legalistic.
I guess you're right. I mean, I'm ready to agree with you on that, mainly because I'm defining it down to where there are almost no movies to watch. So
except the movies that we will one day make under the production banner.
Well, also, what kind of pedantic asshole insists that his definition of a kind of movie is the right one, and therefore everybody else who all agree on a different definition are wrong? That's the kind of jerk that I tend to avoid.
I know what you want to say, though. You want to say it would be really, really cool if there were more films that are like this thing that I wish existed. And
the funny thing is, I'm not even that into it, because I'm more into what you guys are talking about, which is movies that up until this moment, but I will start calling them satanic panic movies, but that I would have just called, I would have just called them, satanic exploitation films or something like,
Yeah.
But I'll start calling them satanic panic just for y'all.
Thank you. Just jump on the bandwagon with us, sir. It's nice and comfy. There's plenty of hay.
Join my cult.
Yeah, join our cult.
We have ropes and goats.
Listen, I grew up in that world. Oh God, you learn so much cool stuff, because I grew up among Southern Baptists, the old Southern Baptist Convention. After the split in the 60s and before the split in whenever that one was recently. I grew up in a version of this other, so back then, there's not supposed to be any rock and roll, and you're not supposed to dance, and you're not supposed to swim with people of the opposite sex. I'm not making that up. No. You're not supposed to pray with your girlfriend because the intimacy can lead to sex, which is true. But I remember.
What part of it is true? Like
I'm just exaggerating for comic effect. But I remember this obsession with Satanism, like in a big way, and it was so naughty, right? So if you could get away with like having a band or something that had some like vaguely satanic stuff, you were like getting away with something that the church was against. I remember that like it was yesterday. So I don't know. Where are we now? Like what?
As far as the movie,
yes.
I think we have Rat
I agree. I think you already said. I think Drew said all that needs to be said, which is that about the mockumentary, which is that give me more of it. It's really good.
well,
I can.
like I said, I understand completely. Like if somebody, when someone comes to me and go, okay, this movie was not my cup of tea. I understand that completely. Like but at the same time, like I had a good time watching this, and I had a really good time talking about it. Like just a fun movie to dissect.
Yeah,
I
me
really
too.
wish I had the foresight to just turn my phone on and record my children and me watching it, because that was incredible. Like the 19-year-old, the 23-year-old, and the 27-year-old and me watching this film and like just like talking about it and like just freaking out about things, and I like, am I getting to watch them with certain reveals? And it
blows my mind, by the way, that you have
it's a family film, guys. So just gather children around.
Well, yeah, if your children are near 30, it blows my mind that you could have a 27-year-old child. That is mind-blowing to me.
I got married when I was 21, and she was born when I was 22. So that's the way it works. People are often incredulous when I tell them that I'm 50. They're like, "Wait a minute, you're not 50."
Well, I mean, and starting so young, because I got married when I was 23, I guess. And hang on, it was January of '94.
Just be happy your wife is not in the room with you right now. She
the smoldering. It was January '94, so there's
going to be a sacrifice to Astaroth in the Henderson Guzman household tonight.
So I was 22. I was 22 when I got married.
So the Astaroth thing. I'm saving you, by the way, Jason.
No, I got the answer, so we're good now.
It's funny, we talk about like the relationship. You brought up Mazes of Monsters and the relationship of Dungeons and Dragons and this whole thing. Yeah. Dungeons and Dragons is actually the first place I remember hearing about the Demon King Astaroth, because he was a monster you could fight in Dungeons and Dragons. And so like that is even though
I did not know that.
Even though it is like legit demonology. Like there really is if you believe in demons, there really is a demon called Astaroth. I will always associate that with Dungeons and Dragons.
But that's great. See, that's what's really cool is these ideas that are ancient. If you associate it more with a recent cartoon, to me, there's something more beautiful than that, because how do you keep something ancient alive? I mean, I'd much rather remember a character as a small minor character in an episode of Super Friends than something carved on some ancient wall, personally.
Although the counterpoint
of
that, the counterpoint of that is if you really are worried about demons the way some people are, you would argue that having that in kid-friendly pop culture is exposing it and giving the demon power,
giving him entree. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
What I love about
part of what
Astaroth is that Astaroth is actually Ishtar or Nana. Astaroth comes from Astarte, which is the Phoenician form of the goddess Ishtar, who is the Babylonian goddess Ishtar, who's the same as the Sumerian goddess Inanna. So we think of him as like this goat-looking motherfucker, but it's a goddess. That's been kind of cool. Originally,
fantastic.
A goddess.
Oh, boom! There you go.
Maybe he's like transgender or non-binary. Yes. Maybe they are non-binary. Maybe
I always go with the Ghostbusters logic, as with most things, is that supernatural beings can be whatever they want.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I like that idea. So I just wish maybe he would come in a sexier form in the next film, because that was pretty disturbing, frankly, at the end of that film.
Yes.
It sat with me for a long time.
You know what, David? I bet you somewhere on the internet, somewhere out there, there's somebody that thought that demon was sexy.
Oh, undoubtedly. And the actor playing him certainly is sexy. If you just look him up, you're like, damn, dude, all right. You're pretty hot.
Again, I had the most, I almost never have a moment when I am not aware that I'm watching a movie. and that's cool. It doesn't make me sad or anything like that. But I really thought it was very, very, very effective. That moment when the film stops and the devil seems to be looking back at you, great.
It was.
That's just so great. Oh, I loved that. I wish they did it in every movie. It'd be so funny if you were watching a James Bond movie and
then
like
Astaroth just paused the film.
It just stops and he like stares back. Yeah.
Never mind James Bond. Let's put that in an Adam Sandler movie.
Holy shit! Can we have Adam Sandler just sacrificed at the end of the film to Astaroth? That would also increase the volume.
Yeah.
Although I keep hearing that his most recent film is good.
He's perfectly capable of doing good work.
Oh yeah, the fact that he continually chooses to make shit is just depressing. Given that he
you know, what's his face? I'm blanking on his name. Good actor, Django Unchained. What is that? Jamie Foxx. Jamie Foxx is a great actor who makes a good movie every 6 to 7 years, and most of the time is in crap.
I think I'm going to go watch Lisa and the Devil as soon as we get off the line. I think I'm looking at this.
Wonderful idea.
Hell yeah!
If you really want to have fun, watch Lisa and the Devil, and then the House of Exorcism, and you'll get to and you can see the seams of how it's a movie that became another movie. Brilliant.
I love all that backstory. That was so cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh no, thank you. Yeah. Thank you for sharing about Astaroth. Okay. Do we want to before we go? Is there anything that David you'd like to endorse? Like tell people you've been reading or watching or
oh wow. I've been watching so much stuff. I've been watching a whole lot of Korean dramas.
Really?
I really recommend Vagabond. It's a kind of a spy actiony series set in Korea and in Morocco. And it is about a stuntman who's raising his nephew, even though he's not a particularly good parent and he's kind of irresponsible, whatever. But he's raising his nephew, and his nephew who's studying Taekwondo gets to go to Morocco as part of this exhibition thing or whatever. And the airplane explodes before it lands and kills 200 something people on board. And the stuntman is drawn into this investigation and discovers that it was the plane was deliberately blown up, and it's an incredible. It's somebody like you, Jason, who loves spy stuff, and you would eat this up. It's really, really well done. Korean shows are just really, really great. So I've been watching a bunch of them. I watched Upload on Amazon, which is this new satirical comedy by the guy who did The Office and Parks and Rec. I can't think of his name right now, and it's really, really fantastic as well. But horror stuff, okay, well, yes, definitely. We Summon the Darkness is great. Satanic Panic is great. Yes, it's not really horror. I've been trying to keep it light, I guess, light and actiony and
sure.
fun, just because of all the stuff that's going on. But once in a while, I dig down. I rewatched. After my kids and I watched Antrum, I showed them House of the Devil, and they had loved that as well. So
good.
Great film to revisit. So those are some of my recommendations.
House of the Devil is really, really cool.
Great. Stands up really well.
Yeah. Mr. Drew, anything that you wanted to recommend?
Well, I already kind of mentioned this about a week or so back, but I'm going to mention it again with a little bit more detail. So, as those of you who listen to this podcast are probably aware, I am a bit of a Ghostbusters fan.
Yes.
But when this show originally came out in the late 90s, because I was being kind of a purist about it, I really did not give Extreme Ghostbusters a chance, in part possibly because it had Extreme in the title, and how eye-rolling is that? And two, because I was annoyed that they had jettisoned most of the original Ghostbusters characters out of the show to put younger characters in. So it is on Hulu now, and I have gone back to revisit it, and I have to say, it is much, much better than I think a lot of people in the fan base give it credit for, and it's got some really cool, you know, kid-friendly horror in it. There's actually even an entire episode that is effectively Ghostbusters versus Hellraiser, essentially.
Oh, wow.
All done on a Saturday morning cartoon. And that's insane. So, like, I think if you like me did not give it a chance back in the day because you were being a purist, but now you're less of a purist because
You're old.
you're old and you're just hungry for more Ghostbusters. Yeah, like it's really really kind of a fun show. And actually the new Ghostbusters that they came up with the show are actually charming characters with a lot of dimension to them, and diverse. They have a guy in a wheelchair, you know, they have a woman Ghostbuster. Gosh, someone called the internet.
Oh, my
And
goodness.
a Latino.
Shit. Oh, they
Yeah,
have a
I
Latino.
know, right? They have a Latino Ghostbuster. So, like, a lot, you know, a lot going for it that I don't think a lot of people thought about, and because, you know, it just sort of came and went. Like, I think if you were to tell people, go, oh, there was a sequel series to the real Ghostbusters that came out in the late '90s, I think a lot of people would scratch their head, because I think, you know, there's the people who watched it and then kind of hate watched it because it wasn't the real Ghostbusters, and then there's the you know, the people who just weren't aware that the thing even existed. So it's all on Hulu. Give it another chance. You'd be hard pressed to find a bigger Ghostbusters fan than me, and I'm giving it a thumbs up. Although maybe that you should take that with a grain of salt, because I don't think there's been a Ghostbusters thing that I've met that I did not like. Although initially I did not like this, and now I do. So take that how you will.
Right,
Have you ever? Were you aware, David, that there was a sequel TV show to the real Ghostbusters?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was aware. I remember when it came out, my oldest daughter was like, I want to say 5 or 6 or something like that. Yeah, right, because it was like the late '90s, right?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
late '90s.
Yeah. And she was really into like Pokemon and Sailor Moon, and I wanted to try to get her interested in other things, and I suggested watching Ghostbusters, and she's like, I don't want to see a show about ghosts, and so we didn't watch it. So I knew of its existence, but I also
am stunned that they got away with some of the stuff on this show. Like, there's an episode that's like a Killer Clowns homage, and they have like clowns like eating people, and I'm like, how did this show even exist? And I'm not saying that it's like bombastically and violent or anything. It's not, you know, it's all done in a very kid-friendly way, but it's, for a Saturday morning cartoon of that time period, it's reasonably horrific.
They're pretty out there ideas. Yeah. Well, like there was a relaunch of Masters of the Universe that was in, I want to say, in the '90s, and nobody liked it because it was one of those things where, you know, it looked so completely different that everybody rejected it sort of instantly. But first of all, I'm sure that there are fans of that particular show who still like hold its banner high and like fill out wikis all about it and like seek one another out.
The weird thing about Extreme Ghostbusters is it's actually in continuity. Like, it is difficult for me I do sometimes wonder who it was actually aimed at, because like there are so many references to
with the Hellraiser stuff. I mean, for heaven's sake, yeah.
Well, and like just the fact that it is like a direct sequel to a cartoon show from the '80s is very odd, to say the least.
Awesome. Well, anyway, I'll seek it out. I'm interested enough to see an animated version of Hellraiser for sure. All right. So, I'll leave my own endorsements to the extent that I have any for Sunday. So, I'm so excited that we got a chance to talk about this. This actually turned out to be a really interesting and inspiring conversation. That's you know, also makes me want to, just like David, I want to go look at Lisa and the Devil, but it's making me think about, you know, the layers of art, the layers that you can deliberately put in your art. Yeah, and that's cool. So,
Ruby,
thank you guys.
It was great talking to you, David. It's been far, far too long. I think
I
it's been
agree.
since Anime Fest last year for me.
Right, it's been a while.
It's crazy. Yeah. Nobody's taken a break on the show. I mean, nobody's taken a break. It's been crazy. I don't know what's happened to us.
Something else fun in the next month or two to have another little chat about.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Nice. I mean, it's not like I want to exclude everybody else, but it's kind of cool just for 3 people to have a chat about something. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree.
Groovy, guys.
Yeah.
Take care.
Yeah.
Later.
Thank you so much. Have a fantastic evening. Bye.
Beware of demons.
I wish I had a demon to edit this show for me.
Astaroth hangs up. He's like, fuck no, I'm out of here. Bye, guys.
Astaroth, get on it. All right. Astaroth, use Audacity, please. All right. Ciao. I'll see you later. Bye.
Night.